Captain Dongmin Kim stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Harmony, watching the stars drift past the viewport. The ship moved slowly through the Kepler sector, its sensors scanning nearby planets for signs of life. This was what humans did best according to the galaxy: explore, study, and keep the peace. The Harmony carried 847 people. Most were scientists like Dr. Young-Soo Cho, who spent his days studying alien plant samples in the ship's labs. Others were diplomats and cultural experts, ready to make first contact with any new species they might find. Only a few dozen were security officers, and they carried simple weapons meant more for ceremony than real fighting. "Captain," called Lieutenant Jae-won Moon from his station, "long-range sensors are picking up some interesting mineral readings from the third planet. Might be worth a closer look." Dongmin nodded. "Take us in, but keep our distance. We don't want to disturb anything important." This was how humans approached everything in space, carefully, peacefully, with respect for others. For 47 years, Earth had been part of the Galactic Council. In all that time, humans had never started a fight. They talked instead of shooting. They shared instead of taking. Other species saw this as weakness, but it had kept the peace. Far away on Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo Park sat in his office deep underground. The walls were covered with star charts and ship designs that most humans had never seen. His desk held reports from across the galaxy, written in code that only a few people could read. A young officer entered and saluted. "Sir, the monthly reports, from all sectors." Hyunwoo took the datapad and read quickly. Mining Station 7 had completed its expansion. Actually, the construction of another hidden shipyard. The research facility near Alpha Centauri had finished testing new weapons that could punch through any known armor. Colony ship New Hope had reached its destination and begun building what looked like farms, but were really military bases. "Any problems?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir. Everything stays hidden. The galaxy still thinks we're just peaceful farmers and scientists." Hyunwoo smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Good. Let's hope it stays that way." At the same time, in the grand halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Soo-Jin Lee was doing what she did best: being ignored. She sat at the human section of the Great Chamber, a small area that showed how little the other species thought of Earth. The Korthak representative, a huge creature covered in scales, was speaking loudly about human weakness. "These soft, pink beings have no spine," he declared. "They run from every fight. They give away their resources to anyone who asks. How can such cowards be part of this council?" Other species murmured agreement. The Korthaks were known as great warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds through strength and violence. To them, humans were puzzling creatures who seemed to have forgotten how to fight. Soo-Jin listened, quietly, taking notes. Every insult, every threat, every detail about Korthak military strength went into her reports. The galaxy thought she was just a nervous diplomat who didn't know how to respond to criticism. They didn't know that her nervousness was really careful intelligence gathering. After the session, she walked to her small office and began typing a coded message to Earth. The Korthaks were getting bolder. Their military leaders were talking about testing human resolve. Some young Korthak officers wanted to attack a human ship just to see what would happen. Back on the Harmony, Dr. Young-Soo had made an interesting discovery. The planet they were studying had once been home to a civilization that had destroyed itself in a massive war. The ruins showed incredible technology, but also terrible weapons that had turned continents into glass. "It's always the same story," he told Captain Dongmin as they studied the data. "Species get too aggressive, build bigger weapons, and eventually destroy themselves. Makes you glad humans learn to be peaceful." Dongmin nodded, but something bothered him about the ruins. The destruction looked too complete, too organized. This hadn't been a chaotic war. It had been systematic elimination. Someone had decided this species needed to die, and then made it happen with cold efficiency. "Dr. Cho," he said slowly, "what would it take to do this level of damage?" The scientist checked his readings again. A massive coordinated strike. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. Perfect timing and absolute determination to leave nothing alive. The captain felt a chill. Could humans do something like this? If we had to? Dr. Cho laughed. Captain, we barely have enough ships to defend our own system. We're explorers, not warriors. Could you imagine Earth building a war fleet? The Council would notice immediately. What Dr. Cho didn't know was that Earth had been building exactly that for decades. Every mining station was really a shipyard. Every research vessel was really a warship with hidden weapons. Every colonial transport could fight better than most military ships in the galaxy. The humans had learned something that other species had missed. Real strength wasn't about looking dangerous. Real strength was about being so dangerous that you never had to prove it. On the bridge of a Korthak warship hidden in an asteroid field, Commander So-Young Han received her orders. Overlord Vextar wanted to send a message to the galaxy about Korthak power. The target was perfect. A single human exploration ship with no weapons and no support. Begin approach, she ordered her crew. Remember, we want this to look like an accident at first. Give them a chance to surrender before we destroy them. Her officers laughed. Humans always surrendered. They were too weak to fight and too smart to die for nothing. This would be easy. The Harmony continued its peaceful mission, unaware that death was approaching. Captain Dongmin finished his reports and prepared for the night shift. Lieutenant. Moon checked the sensor readings one more time. Dr. Cho worked late in his lab, excited about the data from the dead world. None of them knew that their ship had been chosen to deliver a message. The Korthaks wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that refused to be strong. They thought destroying one small human ship would prove their point about weakness and strength. They were about to learn that humans had their own ideas about strength. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks like prey. They were about to find out why humanity's greatest weapon had always been patience. In the depths of space, ancient communication arrays began to hum with coded signals. Ships that had pretended to be civilian for decades started changing course. Weapons that had stayed hidden for 47 years began powering up. The Korthaks wanted to send a message about human weakness. Soon humanity would send a reply about the difference between looking weak and being weak. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had spent half a century preparing for exactly this moment. The age of human pacifism was about to end, and nobody was ready for what would replace it. The attack came without warning, just as the Korthaks had planned. Commander So-Young Han's warship Bloodclaw dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of the Harmony, followed by two smaller escort vessels. Their weapons were powered but not yet firing. This was meant to be intimidation first. Captain Dongmin Kim was in his quarters when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. Report! 3 Korthak ships, sir. Lieutenant Jae-Won Moon called out from his station. They're demanding we stop engines and prepare for boarding. Dongmin looked at the tactical display. The Korthak ships were huge compared to the Harmony. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy his ship 10 times over. But something felt wrong about this. Why would the Korthaks want to board a peaceful exploration vessel? Open a channel, he ordered. Commander Han's scaled face appeared on the main screen. Her yellow eyes showed the typical Korthak contempt for weakness. Human vessel, you will shut down your engines and allow us to inspect your ship. Any resistance will be met with destruction. Commander, Dongmin replied calmly. We are on a peaceful scientific mission. We have no weapons or military cargo. What is the purpose of this inspection? Han's laugh was harsh. The purpose is to show the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place. You humans think you can float through space without consequences. Today, you learn different. In his lab, Dr. Young-Soo Cho was frantically sending data back to Earth through the Deep Space Communication Array. The information about the dead civilization, his research on Korthak psychology, everything that might be useful. He knew the ship was in terrible danger. Emergency protocol activated, he whispered into his communicator. Sending final research package, classification level, Crimson. The word Crimson made the computer pause for a moment, then accept the transmission with special encryption. Very few people knew what that code meant. On Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo Park would receive the message within hours. Back on the bridge, Captain Dongmin was still trying to negotiate. Commander Han, we are willing to allow inspection, but as a peaceful vessel, we request the presence of Council observers to ensure proper protocol. There will be no observers, Han replied, only examples. The first torpedo strike came without further warning. It hit the Harmony's engine section, designed to disable rather than destroy. The ship shuddered and emergency lights began flashing, but instead of stopping, something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Moon's hands flew over his controls, and the Harmony suddenly accelerated, dodging the second torpedo by mere meters. The ship twisted and rolled with agility that shocked the Korthak attackers. Impossible, Commander Han snarled. Human ships can't move like that. What she didn't know was that the Harmony, like all human ships, had been built with hidden capabilities. The engines that looked like simple exploration drives were actually military-grade systems. The hull that appeared civilian was reinforced, with armor that could take surprising amounts of punishment. More importantly, Lieutenant Moon wasn't just a security officer. He was one of the few humans on board who knew the truth about Earth's real strength. He had trained on warships that officially didn't exist. "Captain," he called out, "I can keep us moving for maybe 10 minutes, but we can't outrun them forever." "Doctor." Cho's voice came over the intercom from his lab. "Emergency transmission sent. Earth will know what happened here." Dongmin made the hardest decision of his life. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for combat. We may die today, but we will not die easily." The transformation of the Harmony was subtle, but real. Panels slid away to reveal hidden weapon systems. The ship's computer switched from exploration mode to combat protocols. Sensors that had been scanning for scientific data now looked for enemy weaknesses. But it wasn't enough. The Harmony had been built to hide its true nature, not to fight. 3 warships at once. Commander Han's ship surrounded the human vessel, firing with careful precision to disable rather than destroy. "You fight better than expected," Han admitted as her weapons systematically tore apart the Harmony's defenses. "But it changes nothing. You are still weak." The battle lasted 18 minutes. The Harmony fought with courage and skill that surprised the Korthaks. But mathematics is mathematics. 3 ships against 1. Superior firepower against hidden capabilities. Trained warriors against peaceful explorers. In the end, the human ship's shields failed. Its weapons went silent. Its engines died. Captain Dongmin Kim stood on his bridge as Korthak boarding parties prepared to dock. Around him, his crew waited quietly. They had done their duty. Earth would know what happened here. The message had been sent. "Sir," Lieutenant Moon said quietly, "it's been an honor." "The honor was mine," Dongmin replied. Commander Han's voice came over the communication system one last time. "Human captain, surrender your ship and crew. Become an example of Korthak." "Strength." "Commander," Dongmin answered. "I am Captain Dongmin Kim of the Earth vessel Harmony. We are explorers and scientists. We came in peace, and you chose war. History will remember which of us was civilized." What happened next shocked even the Korthak warriors. Instead of surrendering, the human crew began singing. It was an old Earth song about going home, sung in voices that grew stronger even as their ship died around them. Han had expected begging or crying. She had seen other species break when faced with death. But these humans faced their end with dignity and defiance that made even her hardened warriors uncomfortable. "Enough," she ordered. "Destroy them!" The final torpedo strike tore the Harmony apart. All 847 souls aboard died instantly, their last transmission already racing toward Earth at the speed of light. Commander Han broadcast the battle footage across the galaxy, as Overlord Vextar had ordered. The message was clear. This is what happens to species that refuse to show proper respect to their betters. The galactic response was exactly what the Korthaks expected. Some species expressed sympathy for the loss of life. Others sent diplomatic protests. A few called for investigations or sanctions, but most simply accepted it as the natural order. The strong dominated the weak. Humans were weak. Therefore, humans would be dominated. It was a lesson as old as space travel itself. On Earth, Admiral Hyun-Woo Park received Dr. Cho's final transmission in his underground command center. He read the data quietly, his face showing no emotion. Then he walked to a wall safe that hadn't been opened in decades. Inside was a single red key and a communication device that connected to systems across the galaxy. The device had one purpose: to send a signal that would change everything. "Sir?" his aide asked nervously. "Your orders?" Admiral Park looked at the red key for a long moment. 47 years of peace. 47 years of careful planning. 47 years of hiding humanity's true nature, all ending now. He inserted the key and spoke clearly into the communication device. "All stations, this is Admiral Park. Authorization code, Crimson 77. Execute Protocol Omega. I repeat, execute Protocol Omega." Across the galaxy, signals began to move. Ships that had pretended to be civilian for decades suddenly changed course. Space stations that looked like mining operations began powering up massive engines. Research facilities revealed themselves as military bases. The Korthax had wanted to send a message about strength and weakness. They were about to receive humanity's reply. They had killed 847 innocent people to prove a point about human weakness. Now they would learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. They would discover that humanity's greatest strength had never been their diplomacy or kindness. It had been their patience. The news of the Harmony's destruction spread across the galaxy within hours. Most species reacted exactly as the Korthax had expected. Some sent messages of sympathy to Earth. Others called for investigations that everyone knew would lead nowhere. A few suggested economic sanctions that would never be enforced, but something strange began happening in the days that followed. Shipping companies across the galaxy started reporting delays as vessels changed their routes without explanation. Mining operations suddenly went dark, claiming equipment failures. Research stations stopped responding to routine communications. On the Korthak homeworld, Overlord Vextar celebrated with his military commanders. The attack on the Harmony had been broadcast throughout Korthak space as proof of their superiority. Young warriors cheered the easy victory over the weak humans. "This is only the beginning," Vextar declared to his generals. "The humans will send diplomats and lawyers. They will beg for justice and offer rewards for peace. We will ignore them all. Soon we will attack their homeworld itself and show the galaxy what real strength looks like." War Chief Graktul, the most experienced Korthak military commander, felt less certain. "My lord, the humans seem to fight better than expected. Perhaps we should study their tactics before making larger moves." "Tactics?" Vexitar laughed. "They had no tactics. 3 ships against 1, and it still took 18 minutes to defeat them. If anything, this proves they are even weaker than we thought." What Vexitar didn't know was that human intelligence officers had been listening to every word. Jinna Kang, Admiral Park's chief intelligence officer, had spent 20 years placing surveillance devices throughout Korthak space. Her network of spies included aliens who thought they were just trading with friendly human merchants. "Sir," she reported to Admiral Park, "the Korthaks are planning a direct attack on Earth within the month. They believe our response will be purely diplomatic." Admiral Park nodded grimly. Around him, the hidden command center buzzed with activity. Officers, who had pretended to be civilian administrators for decades, now wore their real uniforms. Walls that had appeared to be simple metal revealed themselves as advanced tactical displays. "Status report on fleet readiness," he ordered. "All vessels are moving into position," replied General Haijin Yang, commander of Terran Special Forces. "Operation classifications have been changed from civilian to military. Stealth protocols are being maintained until your final order." The transformation happening across human space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. What had appeared to be the most peaceful civilization in known history was revealing itself as the most prepared for war. Mining Station 12, which had operated for 30 years extracting minerals from an asteroid belt, suddenly split open like a flower. Inside was a shipyard larger than any planet-based facility in the galaxy. Hundreds of warships that had been built in secret over decades began moving out, their hulls bearing names like Justice, Retribution, and Never Again. The cargo ship, Peaceful. Trader, which had been hauling supplies between human colonies for 15 years, dropped its disguise to reveal the dreadnought Vengeance. Its weapons could destroy a moon, but it had spent its entire existence pretending to carry farming equipment. Captain Minho Ryu stood on the bridge of his ship and marveled at the deception. For his entire career, he had commanded what appeared to be a civilian research vessel. Only now could he see his bridge's true purpose: to coordinate the largest battle fleet in galactic history. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," came the voice over the communication system. "For 47 years, we have maintained peace through patience. Today that patience ends. The Korthax believe they attacked a weak species. They are about to learn the truth about human strength." At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Su-Jin Lee was having the strangest day of her career. For decades, she had played the role of nervous diplomat, always apologizing for human weakness. Today she walked into the great chamber with her head high and her voice strong. "Honorable Council members," she announced, "Earth formally declares that the unprovoked attack on the Harmony was an act of war. We demand the immediate surrender of all Korthak military leaders responsible for this crime." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Council Prime Velnox, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms, gestured for silence. "Ambassador Lee, surely Earth wishes to pursue diplomatic solutions. Humans have always chosen negotiation over conflict." "Humans have always chosen peace when peace was possible," Su-Jin replied calmly. "The Korthax have made peace impossible. Therefore, we choose war." The Korthak representative, a massive warrior named Braktar, laughed loudly. "Weak humans choose war? With what army? With what ships? You have nothing but words and tears." Su-Jin smiled, and for the first time in decades it wasn't a diplomatic smile. "We have exactly what we need." She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of ships throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked Korthak vessels. Blue dots marked human ships. The chamber fell silent as the representatives counted. Where there should have been perhaps 100 human ships scattered across space, there were thousands. Where there should have been peaceful research vessels, there were obvious warships. "Impossible," Braktar whispered. "Where did these ships come from?" "They were always there," Su-Jin replied. "You simply saw what you expected to see. The galaxy believed humans were weak, because we wanted you to believe it. We built our strength in secret, while you built yours in public. Now you will learn which approach was wiser." At that moment, Captain Bo-Ram Lee's stealth reconnaissance fleet was already surrounding the Korthak homeworld. Her ships had been watching Korthak military movements for weeks, invisible to their sensors. Every base, every weapon, every ship had been cataloged and targeted. "Admiral," she reported to Park, "enemy fleet positions confirmed. Defensive systems mapped, ready to paint targets for the main force." "Understood, Captain. Begin final preparations." Across Korthak space, military commanders began receiving confused reports. Ships were appearing on sensors that hadn't been there moments before. Massive vessels that looked like nothing in their databases were taking positions around their worlds. Overlord Vextar was pulled from his victory celebration by urgent communications from his fleet commanders. "My lord," one reported, "unknown ships are appearing throughout our territory. Thousands of them. They appear to be human design, but larger than anything in our intelligence files." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "Humans don't have a real military. Send squadrons to investigate." But as his ships moved to intercept the mysterious vessels, something became clear. These weren't exploration ships pretending to be warships. These were warships that had been pretending to be exploration ships. The difference was about to become very important. Dr. Yoonji Park, the military scientist who had spent 30 years developing humanity's secret weapons, watched from her laboratory as her creations prepared for their first real test. Energy weapons that could punch through any known armor. Shields that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. Engines that could outrun anything in space. all hidden for decades behind civilian facades and peaceful intentions. "Ma'am," her assistant asked nervously, "are you sure we're ready for this? We've never tested these systems in real combat." Dr. Park thought of Captain Dong Min Kim and the 847 people who had died on the Harmony. Good people who had believed in peace right up until the moment they were murdered for being weak. "We've been ready for 50 years, she replied. "We just hoped we'd never need to prove it." In the depths of space, 12,000 human warships continued their approach toward Korthak territory. Each ship carried weapons that had never been fired in anger. Each crew included officers who had trained for war while pretending to be civilians. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's commitment to peace had never been about inability to fight. It had been about understanding the true cost of war and choosing to pay it only when there was no other choice. The Korthaks had made that choice for them. Now they would live with the consequences. The Korthak homeworld had never been attacked in its 1,000-year history. Massive orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like metal moons. Powerful shield generators protected major cities. The greatest warriors in the galaxy called this place home. None of it mattered when 12,000 Terran warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. War Chief Graktul was in the primary command center when the sensors began screaming warnings. At first, he thought the equipment was malfunctioning. No force that large could approach without being detected weeks in advance. "Report," he barked at his sensor operators. "Sir," one replied with a shaking voice. 12,000 vessels, human design, surrounding the planet. They appeared simultaneously, from multiple directions. Graktul stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His entire military doctrine was based on the idea that massive fleets took months to assemble and move. How had humans gathered such a force without anyone noticing? The answer was simple. They hadn't gathered it, they had built it piece by piece over 47 years. Every mining station, every research facility, every civilian transport had been part of the plan. Captain Minho Ryu stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching the Korthak defense fleet scramble to respond. Their ships were impressive, large, heavily armed, crewed by experienced warriors. Under normal circumstances, they would be formidable opponents. But these weren't normal circumstances. "All vessels, this is Admiral Park," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "Target acquisition is complete. Commence Operation Judgment." What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. The Korthaks fought bravely, but they were fighting an enemy that had studied their every tactic for decades. Every move they made had been anticipated. Every strategy they employed had been countered before it began. Dr. Yunji Park's weapons performed exactly as designed. Energy beams that could slice through Korthak armor like paper. Missiles that adapted to enemy countermeasures in real time. Shield systems that absorbed incredible punishment while allowing perfect counterattacks. Commander Tae-ho Shin led his fighter squadrons in attacks that defied everything the Korthaks thought they knew about space combat. Instead of direct assaults, human fighters used gravity wells and asteroid fields as weapons. They turned the environment itself into a tool of war. "Impossible," War Chief Graktul muttered as he watched his finest ships being systematically destroyed. "How do they know our tactics so well?" The answer came from Jinnah Kang's intelligence network. Every Korthak military exercise for the past 20 years had been observed by human spies. Every new weapon had been studied and countered. Every strategic plan had been copied and analyzed. The Korthaks had built their military in the open, proud of their strength. Humans had built theirs in secret, learning from everyone else's mistakes. Overlord Vextar screamed orders from his fortress deep beneath the planet's surface. "Launch everything, every ship, every weapon. These weak humans cannot defeat the might of the Korthak Empire." But as his remaining forces moved to attack, they discovered something terrifying. The human fleet wasn't just larger, it was better. Ships that looked similar to Korthak designs moved faster, hit harder, and took more damage. Weapons that appeared familiar proved devastatingly more effective. Captain Boram Lee's stealth ships had done their work perfectly. Every Korthak ship found itself targeted by multiple human vessels. Every defensive platform faced attacks from directions it couldn't even see. "Sir," reported one of Grak'tul's officers, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. Planetary shields are failing. They're targeting our shipyards and military bases with surgical precision." The war chief realized with growing horror that this wasn't random destruction. The humans were systematically eliminating Korthak military power while carefully avoiding civilian targets. They weren't fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting to win completely and permanently. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Ryu received reports from across the battle zone. "Sir, Korthak Fleet Group Alpha has surrendered. Group Beta is requesting terms. Group Gamma is attempting to flee the system." "Let Group Gamma go," Ryu decided. "They can tell the rest of the galaxy what they saw here." This was another difference between human and Korthak strategy. The Korthaks fought for honor and would die rather than retreat. Humans fought for results and understood that survivors could spread fear better than corpses. In his underground bunker, Overlord Vextar watched decades of military buildup being erased in hours. His greatest warships were burning hulks. His orbital fortresses were silent. His proud warriors were either dead or begging for mercy. "How?" he whispered to his remaining advisors. "How did weak humans do this?" War Chief Grak'tul, his uniform torn and his pride shattered, gave the only answer that made sense. "They were never weak, my lord. We only saw what they wanted us to see." The battle lasted 6 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, the Korthak Empire's military had ceased to exist. Not destroyed in blind rage, but methodically dismantled by opponents who had planned every detail for decades. Admiral Park's voice echoed across the fleet communication system. "All vessels, hold positions, secure the area, and prepare for humanitarian operations." This final order confused the surviving Korthaks more than anything else. They expected execution or enslavement. Instead, human ships began deploying medical supplies and emergency shelters for Korthak civilians. General He Jinyang's special forces, who had been embedded throughout the galaxy for years, now revealed their true purpose. Instead of sabotage or assassination, they began coordinating refugee camps and medical aid for the defeated enemy. "I don't understand," War Chief Grak'tul said as he was brought aboard the Retribution under guard. "Why do you help us after we attacked you?" Captain Ryu looked at the defeated warrior with something like pity. "Because this was never about revenge. This was about ensuring that what happened to the Harmony never happens again." On the planet below, Korthak civilians emerged from their shelters to find human soldiers distributing food and medical supplies. Children who had been taught that humans were weak prey watched in confusion as their inferior enemies treated them with kindness. It was perhaps the most devastating blow of all. The Korthaks could have accepted defeat by superior warriors. They could have understood conquest by a stronger empire. But being defeated and then helped by those they had considered weaklings shattered everything they believed about strength and weakness. Captain Ryu activated the ship's communication system to broadcast across the galaxy. His image appeared on screens throughout known space, standing on the bridge of humanity's most powerful warship, surrounded by the burning remains of what had been the galaxy's most feared military. "To all species in the galactic community," he began, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "This is Captain Minho Ryu of the Terran fleet. The Korthak Empire attacked and destroyed a peaceful human vessel, killing 847 innocent people. This is our response." He gestured to the tactical display showing the complete destruction of Korthak military forces. "We did not seek this war. We did not want this war. But when war was forced upon us, we ended it decisively." The camera focused on his face, and for the first time in decades, a human looked directly at the galaxy, without apologizing for human weakness. "We gave you peace," he said simply. "You chose war. This is war." The transmission ended, but its message echoed across every world in the galaxy. Humanity had revealed its true nature at last. They weren't the weak, pacifist species everyone had believed them to be. They were predators who had learned to disguise themselves as prey. And now, the disguise was off. 3 weeks after the Battle of Korthak Prime, the galaxy had changed forever. News of humanity's overwhelming victory spread faster than light-speed communication, carried by the few Korthak ships that had been allowed to escape. The story was always the same. 12,000 human warships had appeared from nowhere and destroyed the galaxy's most powerful military in less than 7 hours. Ambassador Kreltar of the defeated Korthak Empire sat across from President Nayon Kim in a conference room aboard the human flagship Unity. The Korthak diplomat's scales had lost their proud luster, and his eyes no longer held the arrogant fire that had once defined his species. "The terms are harsh," he said quietly, reading through the peace agreement for the 3rd time. President Kim nodded. "They are fair. Complete demilitarization, war crimes trials for those responsible for the Harmony massacre, and reparations to the families of the victims. But your people will be protected, fed, and helped to rebuild a peaceful society. And if we refuse?" The president's expression didn't change, but somehow the room felt colder. "Ambassador, look out that window." Kreltar turned to see the viewport, showing Korthak Prime in the distance. Human ships still surrounded the planet, not as conquerors but as guardians. Medical stations had been set up to help injured Korthak civilians. Food distribution centers operated around the clock. Engineering. Teams worked to repair damage to civilian infrastructure. But underneath the humanitarian aid was an unmistakable message. These ships could destroy everything if the peace was broken. "Your people chose war," President Kim continued. "We chose to end it. You can accept our terms and rebuild, or you can resist and face the consequences. But there will be no third option." Admiral Sung-Ho Choi, commander of the occupation forces, entered the room with a datapad. "Madam President, the final reports from all sectors. Korthak military assets have been completely cataloged and removed. No hidden weapons or ships remain." The efficiency was staggering. In 3 weeks, human forces had not only defeated the Korthak military, but had systematically found and dismantled every weapon cache, every hidden base, every secret project throughout their empire. It spoke of intelligence gathering that had been going on for decades. "How long?" Kreltar asked suddenly. "How long have you been watching us?" Admiral Choi exchanged a glance with the president, then answered honestly. "Since first contact 47 years ago. Every ship you built, every weapon you tested, every strategy you developed, we knew about it." The implications hit the Korthak ambassador like a physical blow. "You let us think we were superior while planning our destruction. We hoped it would never be necessary," President Kim replied. "We preferred peace. You chose differently." At the Galactic Council, the emergency session had been going on for days. Council Prime Velnox struggled to maintain order as representatives from hundreds of species tried to process what had happened. The humans they had dismissed as weak pacifists had just demonstrated military power beyond anything in recorded history. Ambassador Sujin Lee sat calmly in the human section, no longer playing the role of nervous diplomat. Her transformation was as dramatic as her species. Where once she had apologized for human weakness, now she spoke with quiet authority about galactic peace. "The question before this council," she addressed the assembly, "is simple. Do we continue to allow aggressive species to attack peaceful ones? Or do we establish real consequences for unprovoked violence?" The Zephyrian representative, a tall being with crystalline features, spoke nervously. "Ambassador Lee, while we sympathize with human losses, the scale of your retaliation seems excessive. Was it necessary to completely destroy Korthak military power?" Sujin's answer was direct. "Ambassador, in the past century, how many peaceful species have been attacked by aggressive ones? How many times has this council expressed sympathy and done nothing? The Korthaks attacked us because they believed there would be no real consequences. They were wrong." She activated a holographic display showing shipping routes throughout the galaxy. "As of today, human vessels patrol these major trade lanes. Any ship that attacks civilian vessels will face immediate response from Terran forces. Any species, that wages unprovoked war will find themselves facing the same fate as the Korthax. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several species began speaking at once, some protesting human arrogance, others expressing relief that someone was finally enforcing galactic peace. "This is tyranny," shouted the hegemony representative. "No single species has the right to police the galaxy." Sujin stood, and something in her posture made the entire chamber fall silent. "You're right. No single species should have that responsibility. But for 47 years, this council has proven incapable of stopping aggression. So humanity will do what the council cannot. We will ensure that peaceful species can explore and trade without fear." On Earth, in the same underground command center where it had all begun, Admiral Hyunwoo Park reviewed reports from across the galaxy. His gamble had worked. Humanity's long deception was over, but their position was stronger than ever. "Sir," his aide reported, "initial reactions from major species. The Centaurians and Altarians have formally requested human protection for their trade routes. The Draconian Federation wants to negotiate mutual defense agreements. Even some of the more aggressive species are reconsidering their expansion plans." Admiral Park nodded. "And the rest?" "Watching and waiting. No one wants to be the next example." That was exactly what humanity had hoped for. The destruction of the Korthak military had been as much about sending a message as achieving justice. The galaxy needed to understand that the age of consequence-free aggression was over. Captain Min-ho, Ryu, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it patrolled the Outer Rim territories. His ship had become a symbol, not of human aggression, but of human resolve. Pirates and raiders who had once operated freely now thought twice before attacking civilian vessels. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "distress signal from a Delian transport. They're under attack by unknown raiders 3 light-years from here." "Set course immediately," Ryu ordered. Maximum speed. This was the new reality. Human ships no longer hid their true nature. When peaceful vessels called for help, the Terran fleet responded with overwhelming force. The galaxy was learning that attacking civilians meant facing the wolves of Terra. The rescue of the Delian transport took less than an hour. The raiders, seeing human warships approaching, fled without firing a shot. Word was spreading that fighting Terran forces meant certain destruction. In his quarters later, Admiral Ryu wrote his daily report to Earth. The galaxy was adapting to the new order faster than anyone had expected. Trade was actually increasing as merchants felt safer under human protection. Several species had requested permission to establish colonies near human patrol routes, but it wasn't just about military might. Dr. Yoonji Park's research teams, no longer forced to work in secret, were sharing defensive technologies with peaceful species. Human medical ships provided aid to anyone who needed it, regardless of politics. The message was clear: align with peace, and humanity would be your friend and protector. Choose aggression and face the consequences. A year later, Ambassador Kreltar signed the final documents establishing the Korthak Reconstruction Zone. His people were slowly building a new society based on cooperation rather than conquest. Human advisors helped, but they didn't rule. The choice to change had to come from within. "Do you think my people can truly change?" he asked President Kim during one of their regular meetings. "We did," she replied simply. "Humans were once as violent as any species in the galaxy. We learned that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not conquering them. Your people can learn the same lesson." As she spoke, reports arrived from across the galaxy. The Terran fleet had prevented 6 potential conflicts in the past month simply by existing. Aggressive species were choosing negotiation over war. The galactic peace that had been an impossible dream for centuries was becoming reality. Standing at the window of her office, looking out at the stars, President Kim thought of Captain Dong-min Kim and the 847 people who had died on the Harmony. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. Their deaths had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for too long. The galaxy had mistaken human patience for weakness. They had confused kindness with inability to fight. Now they understood the truth. The most dangerous predator is often the one that chooses not to hunt. Humanity had spent 47 years preparing for a war they hoped would never come. When it came, they had ended it so decisively that no one would dare start another. The age of human pacifism was over. The age of human-enforced peace had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.